Sign Qual. Welcome to Couch Crunch Podcast. And got Nick here and me. And we're gonna be pretty much reviewing. Guys stand clear because we're gonna be spoiling this movie going forward. Pretty much gonna be an overall review on this. So uh initial thoughts. Going into this movie, did you know anything about the wrestler or the career or
No,
much
actually,
about with
yeah, I actually never knew anything about this because this is obviously like way before our time, right? So I think
uh
that's probably going to be for starters. I'm not the biggest like wrestling fan out there, especially with the
yeah.
W and the WWE nowadays. You know what I mean? But I guess it was different when the WWE was, before it was like, what was it? I think it was called National Wrestling Alliance. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, so that was like
And
yeah, it was like way back in the day. So, I didn't had no idea about this family in general. Um, so
yeah.
when I first took a notice into this film, the first thing I kind of noticed was like, it's just wrestling, family, and obviously the studio company, which is like obviously A24. So that's I feel like most people came to see that because it was A24.
Oh yeah, they just fashion the
Yeah,
past couple years now.
yeah, they're just a massive kind of film production company. But yeah, but diving into this film, I mean, when we first start being engaging with these characters in general, the first thing to take away is like, you know, your curiosity definitely goes skyrocketing. You know what I mean? Because it's like, what's going on in this film? It's about wrestling. That's all we know, but there's more to it, right? So as we start to dabble into more deeper into the characters, um, the I don't want to get too much in depth with like each specific character, but I would say,
Yeah.
you can kind of tell the bondship that the brothers have between each other is a very sacred bondship.
Oh yeah.
Even with their father, who seems to, that's kind of the first thing I took away from the film. Seems to be a little hard on his kids. Not to
Oh
talk
yeah.
bad about anybody that's not no longer here to defend themselves or anything like that. But it was a different time era back in the day where we don't have the privileges that we have today in today's society, right? Like our parents now, you know, kids growing up now, I guess you would say like kind of in my generation or probably under, um, is a little more have free will, more to do what you want to do. Or, you have parents who believe that you can do whatever as long as you set your mind to something, you could do it. Um,
Oh,
it wasn't like that back in the day, back in those times. Those times where you can have talent for something, you can, put your mind into something and really enjoy it, but your parents would probably never see it because how the way they were raised. So it was kind of hard, like, it was kind of hard for them to see like what would life be like with them doing what they really wanted to do and not be not having to be in a set path where your parents already kind of drew you know it was rough back
yep.
then. I wouldn't know because obviously I'm in my late 20s, way too young to understand what that would be like back in the 70s and 80s, but it was a different time era. So that's kind of what we're kind of taking away from this film is kind of seeing the connection between the brothers, having to their father was kind of like the commander or the general, and they're the cadets, the privates, and having to take orders from their dad no matter how much they don't agree with his methods or like his decisions or like how much he's obsessed with the sport itself. So I think
Yep.
that's something to take away from. But when we're first introduced into the movie, it's kind of like seeing um it's kind of like seeing the dad, who is, I believe, what's his name, Fritz von Eldritch, if I'm pronouncing that right. Um,
Yeah, I believe so.
yeah, yeah. So he was like way back in, I think, like what, the 30s maybe. I think I'm not entire not 30s, way back there, but probably like the 60s or the 50s, where he was actually trying to become like a world champion, right? So he
Yeah,
wanted to be a world champion in the NWA, and I think he just, you know, because he had developed like a really strong passion for this sport. I'm guessing like it didn't really take him too far enough, right? Because we started seeing some of his changes that he was making to his life, because he sees like, he was taking risks, right? He bought a new car. He wanted to see more things for his family, right? He wanted to start
uh,
like, start spending and, looking at things from a brighter angle, as we all get to do, like when we're actually, doing good in whatever field that we start to do, right? Like that's something that I guess everybody does. Um
yeah.
but
Believe the farthest he got in his career too. He says he won the world title at one point in 1963,
yeah,
around his era. So I think that's like the top, how that as far as he went in his career
right.
until his sons took it over, like you were saying.
And it was rough, right? Like, I mean, he wanted to be the champ, and I guess he just didn't get that. Like, you see, he explains that later in the film, where it's like he didn't get to that point where his son did, you know. So I guess at some point, like, it
Yeah.
just wasn't for him, and he rather had. It's like almost any any vet in a sport that's been doing it for a while, like they probably were champs in their time period. But after a while, they just kind of gave it up and just was like, all right, so I still want to be involved somehow in this sport. Why not try to find a way to manage a team, right? To be a manager of a team or something. So that's what he did. He developed his own kind of gym, his own team, which is his sons, and he just really was like hammering down on them to make sure that they're always staying on point with their moves. um you know the mindset, you got to strategize your move sets. Like, he was really hard on them, man.
Oh yeah.
And particularly like,
And the three too, like
and particularly Kevin, right?
three
Like, I feel
sons.
like, and that's what like, for anybody who doesn't, who aren't familiar with like the family, I don't know too much about them myself. I just know, like, obviously from the film and, doing research online. Um, Kevin is probably the last one that's actually remaining from the brothers, the Eldridge brothers, if I'm saying that right. Um,
Yeah.
Through, what is it, 2, 3? Well, one actually died from, um, what was it, an eruption in his intestines. Um,
Oh yeah.
and I don't really know how you actually get that. I think, like, it, due to the sport, I'm guessing how many times he's got hit in the stomach. Like, I don't really know how that tends to develop, but that's an unfortunate tragedy, right? You
Yeah,
got
because it one scene showed him like throwing up blood in the, like at I believe Kevin's wedding. At one
yeah.
point, he was like throwing up. This is horrible. It's pretty much describing like the eruption starting to happen before he went to Japan, and it unfortunately finished him from there.
Yeah, I
But
thought
yeah,
it was Curry that was when Kevin actually was done when he was having the, what was it, after party or something like that, after he got married. Um
yeah.
I thought it was Curry, cuz we started seeing Curry taking shots of heroin. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Right. So we started seeing that, and I thought that was actually him throwing up, but then when we actually seen it was David, I was like, "Oh shit, this is different." Like, um
yeah.
and it's a shame, man, because again, like, I think what was really hard for it, like, each of the brothers, man, it was like they just wanted to be the favorite. I don't even like, I think they had passion for the sport. I just think like they wanted to be dad's favorite, because I think that
Oh,
was
yeah.
like a real important kind of psychological thing that was going on within the family, because as we seen in the beginning of the film, we see like them sitting at the breakfast table, and I mean, breakfast table at the dinner table, and they're eating breakfast, and you can kind of say like the father himself was like trying to like be hard on Mike, which is the younger brother, wanting to be like to let him know like what do you want to do with your career.
Yeah.
You really need to start thinking about joining the wrestling, and the NWA. So it's like, you know, and then after he said that, it was kind of like, well, we all know who his favorite is. I think he said Curry was his favorite, or I think it was David. It was one of those two. But I think it bothered
Yeah.
Kevin the most because Kevin was always kind of like hard on himself, man. Like, you know, pushing beyond his limits. Even if he decided, like, even if he lost, he still was gonna keep doing the sport no matter what. Like he was determined, man. He was determined to keep pushing. Um, and I think
Yeah. At
like,
one point, it seemed like Kevin, every time he would get to a pinnacle point, like he would win a belt, but then he get lowballed by like one of his brothers would like take the mic and be like, "Oh, take the spotlight from him," and it would kind of his father would look down on him because of scenes like that. It's like, damn,
yeah,
it's like every time he reaches to the top, one
it
of his
was
brothers come along and like,
it was never good enough,
overshadow him.
right? Like, it, you know, this is what the movie was, because like it's mostly centered around the brothers, but it's telling it from his angle because he's obviously the last one remaining that's still alive today. Um, but it's mostly told by his angle too because he was the one that was always overshadowed by all of them, really.
Yeah.
And I think he was the most determined out of all of them. I think David too at the same time. I think David was neck and neck with him, but I really
Yeah.
think like it was mostly like this sport was built for Dave, like Kevin. You know what I mean? Like like he really wanted to be the one, and I felt like he was going to be the one, but because of all the like due to all the unfortunate circumstances of his brothers committing suicide and that death. I can't imagine what the pain this man had to endure. You know what I mean? And it's rough. But you know what I loved about the film in general. It's just the connection, like seeing these young boys, you know what I mean? Because they were young, man. Like they were I think Kevin was like, well, because like you seen some of like, Bart, like it kept going fast forwarding, right? Like it was jumping chapters because I think when the movie first started, he was still like in his early 20s. I mean, late 20s, maybe, because like it fast forward to like when he was in his 40s, you know,
Oh yeah.
like, I don't know.
I kind of interpreted it teens, like when it first started, but I'm not sure if they were like college age or if, like they're late
Right,
teens.
right.
I don't know.
Yeah. It's like there was no way to determine, right? But
Yeah,
that was the same thing that I mean, that's what really I took away from it was kind of seeing like them kind of the evolution between them going through stuff and then kind of accomplishing what they went through. You know what I mean?
right. And even like it didn't really go too deep into it, but like it started off rough because like the oldest brother that never really got to make it past. I forget the age he was when he
He
passed,
was
but he was
like,
like a
I think he
child.
was like 6. Yeah.
Yeah, he died because he drowned, unfortunately, and yeah, like that was like the story kind of starts off saying like their name of Eric, the Erics, is like a curse to the family lineage, and
Yeah,
that's like a
I didn't get that though. They don't really explain that why. Well, I think they explained it a little bit where Kevin was kind of explaining it to his wife, and
yeah,
I think it was a name kind of given. Well, it was a name that he took as a stage name, right? The father. Well, so
yeah,
the
the
dad took it
dad's
as a stage name, and um, I think after that, it was kind of like it was a name that was like already had like some sort of tainted. I don't know, some type of curse that was on it. I don't know. And it was
yeah,
like it was a known kind of like a local superstition. You know what I mean? That everybody was kind of, saying like, "Yo, that that family's kind of like cursed or whatever the case is," and they never believed in it. Um,
Right.
and then they started to notice things were just going downhill, like,
Yeah.
you know, and I I don't
Level one.
I'm not I am a stickler for actually believing in that stuff. Like I do believe in that. Um, but in this sense, like I feel like it happened mostly. Everything that mostly just happened was because they were pushed too much. I'm not gonna sit here and say that it was all the dad's fault. You know what I mean? Like it was a couple of factors in there, but
Yeah.
I
I
feel
think a
like
big play is the industry of wrestling at that time. It's
yeah.
just like really
Right, because they
hardcore.
weren't the only
Of,
ones that did stuff like that before. Yeah,
yeah, it's like a real known thing. It's like it's just like the '80s. Like a lot of people did drugs around that time. It was like the crack era, and a lot of heroin would be tossed around in the industry behind the scenes, and
yeah,
like cocaine, or the just the rock star lifestyle. And unfortunately, you get mixed up in that, and you overdo it.
yeah.
And some of the brothers seem to got caught up in that lifestyle,
But what
unfortunately.
what did you thought? I mean,
Oh yeah,
I'm still gonna get more into like what I gotta think, but like go ahead. I kind of want to know what you're thinking.
it was like a very surreal piece of like wrestling, because when I first initially went into the movie, I didn't really know too much about the characters or anything. Like I just knew it was like a biography kind of film based on real people. But outside of that, I didn't really know too much about the people until I started reading more into it and seeing that, as we were saying, like the brothers would pass away one by one as they was going on in their careers. I'm like, shit, man, this seems like a dark story. And yeah, from there I was kind of hooked. And it's sad that that was like one of the main drivers of this film, of like seeing the darkness of what goes on scenes of wrestling to begin with.
Right.
But it's like, yeah, seeing like you said, like seeing the brothers play football together, and like being like there was like a whole tribe of wolves like being brought up in this kind of tough way of being brothers, and under their father having a high standard on them and really trying to live up to that.
Yeah.
And it's like it's I do like that, at least like the brothers were like also like try to pick each other up every time like one of them will fall down. Like you could tell they had like a tight bondship in that kind of way. Like
Right.
even when they would like, disagree with each other, they'd be like, man, it's not worth it. It's like you can. They will always like encourage each other. Like when one of them do better than the other, they'd be like, "Oh man, you did a good job." Like I like I like seeing that. Like it showed like very honorship between those two,
Right.
between
Right.
all. Even like the one brother, the musician, like you've seen like him, like he was like the one odd one out. He went off to become like a and part of a band,
Talking about
and
Mike, right? Like,
really, yeah, Mike, yeah, like you could see that he was trying to strive for that kind of career and becoming a musician. I was like, oh man, and that's interesting to see that dynamic, and to see that I don't think that the father initially really had a problem with it until like later on in the story, like seeing that when I think it was Curry that got into that accident on the motorcycle and he had to replace him. But it seemed like they was fine with him being a musician, but it seemed like after some point of him starting to become into the industry with his other brothers in the wrestling, it seemed like it kind of went downhill for him
yeah,
as well.
he kind of it was he was kind of like roped into it because of the death of David. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And it's kind of like a chain effect in a way, because like when one brother would drop off, the other ones would be affected by that, and they would go into a deep depression as well. And it's just like when one of them falls, like all of them just it's and it seemed like Kevin was like the glue that kept them all together at one point, but then after some time, it just is it was it's no use of keeping them all together. It was hard. It's a tough situation.
Right.
Seriously, it's unfortunate that it played out like that, but it especially seeing how tight they were all together too, and it's a very character piece of looking into it, like a family that all had like somebody to go down the lineage of and follow that path, but some of them even like the main character, Kevin, he seemed like even after a while, like every time he get like lowballed, he'd be like, man, you could just see it in his face the way he's betrayed by Zac Efron. Like it's like he was like, man, is it even worth being in this industry? That's kind of what the feel you would get from him sometimes, just looking at his character expression and like the way he would move, and like even when he started to have a family, it's like, damn, is this even worth to stay in this kind of industry? It's
Right.
I could tell he probably wanted to be out more earlier than what his father wanted him to be, and he was trying to sell it at some point, and his dad got pissed off, and yeah, it was rough,
Right.
and like you said, it's not all to do to what his father had to do with that, but he unfortunately played a part in that. But it's it's part of the game. It's like once you're in the industry, it's hard to get out. You
Yeah,
know, it's like any
absolutely.
other just music during that time. It's like also with any kind of entertainment, you know,
Right.
especially something starting that will eventually lead into the WWE, because you will see like famous wrestlers like Ric Flair in there make cameos, and like a lot of those wrestlers came from the NWA to go eventually go into the WWE, and like that's where it all really started. So it's like to see where this famous family started and like the pinnacle of wrestling, and then unfortunately comes down even it ends before the WWE begins. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, damn, this man it's really rough, but it's a really well told story of like
That
seeing our
that
family
yeah,
grow up.
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I feel like it was told in such a great story. Like we got a chance to see like all the angles from them training to be the best to being the best to then,
You know,
coming to an end. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, it was such a small time frame because most of these men they were still young, man. They didn't even make it past the 70s, some of them. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So, um, that was such an unfortunate kind of, like I said, like circumstances. Like it was fucked up. You know what I mean? And
right.
you even had like I've seen I seen a couple of posts on Twitter actually from A24, and it's like I had a couple of people that was on Twitter and saying like, "Yo, you had grown men in the theater kind of crying and shit, or grown women." You know what I mean? Like just having people because it was that touching. Like I think the saddest part was for me it was I think it was Mike, man, when he got somehow that was I don't know. I don't know how it works. I don't know how the human body works, but I don't know how he managed to, get like some sort of brain injury from a shoulder break, like, from hurting his shoulder. So it was like,
Yeah,
how?
yeah. I didn't believe they said like in that hospital scene was showing like what was like the condition he was in. They said I had a lot to do with like the spinal cord, or like the shockwave throughout his body kind of affected his nervous system and his brain
But
from the
they said like
spine.
they said the odds were like really low, like that's never happened before. Like that was like
Yeah.
one of like in a billion kind of moment. Like, you know what I mean?
Like very rare for somebody
Yeah.
to get.
Yeah.
Yeah, like with the odds. Again, it comes back to that curse. There was this ongoing thing that's going on through the movie. It's like the name of this family. It's like why is this all happening? That's what Kevin says at some point when he's talking to his wife. It's like it just keeps on happening. It's like how, you know? And even at one point, like he's like trying to stay distance away from his wife and his baby, because he's like, I don't want to pass this on to you guys because it feels like I'm cursed. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like, damn. He, but it's like his wife is like struggling with that because she's like, what are you talking about? You're supposed to be taking care of your child. It's like
Yeah, it was
it's like
hard.
that
It
struggle.
was definitely hard for any man to try to do. I mean, listen, your first rule of thumb is, obviously you got to take care of your family, but he also had another family too. Like, that the love for his brothers was like real deep to him. Not saying like his kid and his firstborn child wasn't, or you know what I mean, his wife wasn't. I'm just saying like this was the brothers played a big importance in their lives. You know what I mean? So when he lost them, it just felt like he was lost. I mean, I think anybody would probably feel that way. I think anybody
Like
would feel that way about that. Like if you lost a dear sibling to sibling, best friend, you know what I mean? These things are family. They're like a part of you. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like when you lose them, you're like, fuck, you lost a piece of yourself, right? Like,
exactly, it's like your other half of you. It's
yeah,
like literally you ate, breathed, and slept in the same place for years, and
yeah.
it, some scenes he would just be like, I don't know where that place was. I think it was just like an office, like where they would have meetings or something. But you would just see him crawled up on the floor because
Yeah,
he
yeah. That was
wouldn't want to
the
go home.
yeah, that was the dad. That was the dad's like business.
Oh,
That
okay.
was like the gym, yeah.
Okay, yeah, you would just see him crawled up on the floor, just crying himself to sleep in the dark, and he
Right.
didn't want to go home. He wanted to avoid passing it on to his family. I'm like,
Yeah.
damn, that's really psychological trauma
And that's what it
to
is.
really go.
That's what this whole movie is about. It's just like actual the psychology in this movie was like real. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like that's what we needed to really take away from was like, how rough the dad was on them, how they're pushing their limits or you know what I mean? Like they just felt like they couldn't really save like some of them felt like they couldn't save themselves in that moment where you had Curry, doing mad drugs. David trying to be, the best fighter for his dad to look up to, you know what I mean? Like, or even the same thing with Kevin, like the same thing with Kevin. Mike wanted to do his own thing, but he just couldn't because his parents didn't really allow him to. Like, I feel like a lot of this has to do with the psychological aspect of things, like, you know,
Right.
and it was just unfortunate, like how it panned out. I felt bad for the mom mostly because I feel like the mom had to like, I mean, man, I tell you, man, that's got to be rough. Watch both your sons. I mean, all four of your sons. Like what? Yeah, four, right? Because I think even the first one that passed away.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't really see too much of her throughout the movie, but like some of the sadder scenes we see her unfortunately in each funeral. But it's like she's like known to be like the religious type of the family.
yeah,
Like she
yeah,
was
yeah,
very that's I think that's one of the things they described her as in the beginning of the film. Is like they said she's like the religious every time like when one of the sons would have a problem, she's like the religious person to go to for as that to solve a problem too. And
yeah,
that the dad was problems through wrestling, and that's like his disciplined way of like getting through things. And sometimes to his detriment because sometimes Kevin would try to reach out to his father to try to help his brothers, and the dad would just be like, "Oh, you guys can handle it yourselves. Between you guys, you guys do it yourselves." And
yeah,
it was it was rough. You could tell it was hard to communicate with to the dad outside of what wrestling was and
yeah. But
the reality.
that's why it just almost felt like it was never good enough. That's why the kids felt that way. You
Yeah,
know. But
and
that's the main thing to take away from this whole film without being too harshly because this is a real thing we're talking about here. That's why we're not saying anything that would hurt the actual the family's history or anything like that of us talking bad about them or anything. But it's the main thing to really analyze in this film, right? Like it's just the life that they had to live. Like like it's rough.
yeah. And it's not like the dad was like always a hard ass on the kids. At some points you see him be happy playing football with them and be like, oh, you can see that he's like happy
Right.
playing, seeing as a team, and it's like I think the father was just coming at like he just wanted them to always be together as like holding the championship and holding that lineage that he had when he was in the NWA at some point.
Yeah.
I just it seemed like he wanted them to hold that and be proud of them in that kind of way.
Yeah, but it was
But
almost like what was the goal after they got the championship? Like when they got the heavyweight champion of the world, was it, were they just gonna just just own the belt and or just continue the sport? I mean, it's just so many questions to ask of like what would have been, what could have been,
yeah, because that's the thing about this artificial. come on, let's be honest. Everybody knows at this point. I mean, decades. It's like wrestling is not real, obviously. Well, at least not this entertainment version. It's more like a soap opera for guys. Back then,
Yeah.
especially macho guy. Being able to take on that persona of a character and really like talk your shit while you're in the ring and really display your. They would actually hurt themselves in a kind of way, like they would slam themselves, but it wouldn't be the opposition
Yeah,
slamming
it
them.
wouldn't
But
be them getting punched in the face or anything like that. Like it was, yeah.
yeah, because I remember I seen like a long time ago, I seen like a documentary on like the WWE behind the scenes, like even like the way they would get like bleed out. They would before they would start the set, they would take razor blades and cut like slice their skin open with the blade, so that way like when they do like tap their skin, the blood would leak out and it make it seem like they really are bleeding from whatever the impact was. So that's how much of a, a display of a show they're trying to put on to make it realistic as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of it obviously was scripted and put on, and that's a lot it comes to they can't hold that championship because when there's a new wrestler that's coming along, they had to put on that person to make them seem like sellable to the audience. So you can't hold the championship forever unless it's written in your story of what they're trying to tell during that time. But yeah, it's a it's an interesting thing to really observe, especially with it being like really artificial. Seeing that like them trying to balance both, put on an act, but also trying to keep that standard of keeping that championship or keeping that your character in that light, because that's a lot of it's kind of like the music industry in a way. Like as long as you're entertaining, you can stay in the industry. But as soon as you're being put overshadowed by the new act or the new character
You're
that's
done.
being displayed,
Yeah.
you're put out. Yeah, so it's like the brothers had to keep on. I think that's why that one scene where I think it was his brother Curry, he took the mic from Kevin and he was trying to, because you could tell like Kevin's character wasn't really a good
Like a shit talker.
speaker when it comes to, because at one point he had to talk in front of the camera after he won like one of the belts, and he had to shit talk to the camera to one of the kids, but he had to keep taking these multiple takes because he kept messing up, and Curry was kind of laughing at him. He's like, "Yo, you want to do this? Because you're over there talking shit in the background." But you can tell he's not the outspoken one out of all the brothers versus like Curry. He's like more of a over that persona of putting on that character more or less for the audience. So it's like you need that when it comes to like this entertaining NWA side of wrestling. You need that persona, and it's a crazy industry. But if you really like stand back and look at it, just to see how even how the WWE is now, it's like it can become really ridiculous at some points. It's like, all right, that's obviously not real with that with what's going on. But okay. But yeah,
how would you rate it?
I'll probably give it an 8. It's really good.
That's pretty high for you.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the better movies this year. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, but it's like it really
the
moves.
The story was good, bro. Like
yeah, like emotionally, like it hit hard. It's like damn. It almost had me at one point seeing some of the brothers go out. I'm like, damn. Especially that ending scene where they show the brothers going off on the boat.
Yep. They just wanted to see each other so bad that, you know what I mean? I guess that's what they seen, their version of heaven. Yeah.
Yeah, even at one point really it was like chilling when the mom was like getting ready for one of the boys' funeral, watching one of the sons win a championship, and you can see the ghost, the lingering of a ghost of one of the sons on the stairs watching with her, and she turns around and the ghost disappears, but for a split second you'll see one of the brothers there. I was like, oh damn, that's creepy, and that's kind of surreal to see. But yeah, It's definitely it's a real good movie. I say check it out, even if you're not into wrestling, because I'm not really too into wrestling
Nah,
myself.
yeah,
But
I don't think none of us on the podcast are.
yeah, but like seeing that, like seeing the reality of this industry, it's like in this family, just in general, it's a very interesting character piece. I'll say to check out.
Yeah,
What would you?
I rated it 8 too. Yeah,
Okay.
because it was just that good. Like, the way the story was
Yeah.
told, the connection you have with each character, um, the cinematic scenes that kind of were shot. Like, I love the camera angles that they were using. Um, the music was pretty good too, so it was like a lot of things kind of connected with the audience for sure with this movie. So I'm gonna go ahead and
Oh
say
yeah.
like 8, yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's another thing I forgot to mention too. Yeah, the soundtrack was really good in this movie too.
Yeah,
Yeah, really is fitting.
but
But yeah,
I think that's about it.
yeah, guys, like and really hit up our 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Music if you can. Yeah, it really helps us out. And follow us if you really like the rest of our content on Spotify and Apple Music and the rest of the streaming sites you find us on. And yeah, that's about it.
We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.
Peace.